What if the story you tell yourself about your past is not the truth, but a carefully crafted prison designed to protect you from the terrifying responsibility of your own future? Let that question detonate in the deepest, most guarded chamber of your heart, because right now, you are not living your life. You are narrating it. And the narrator you have hired is a bitter, resentful, trauma-addicted historian who has been falsifying the archives for decades. You cling to your wounds like a child clings to a threadbare blanket, not because the blanket keeps you warm, but because the thought of letting it go means facing the frozen tundra of accountability. Your past is not your destiny. Your past is a script you inherited, edited, and now recite daily. Today, we are going to fire that narrator, burn the script, and force you to improvise a new act where you are not the victim of your history but the author of your horizon. Let's dissect the psychology of the victim identity with the scalpel of clinical precision. Psychologists recognize a phenomenon called narrative identity, the internalized story we construct about our lives that gives us coherence and meaning. This story is not objective history, it is a subjective reconstruction, filtered through the lens of our current emotional state. When you have endured pain, your brain naturally highlights those moments because they are survival relevant. But something sinister happens when you repeat that pain to yourself and others. You begin to derive secondary gains from it. These gains are perverse but real sympathy, attention, excuses for failure, and most powerfully, the abdication of agency. If you are a victim, nothing is your fault. If nothing is your fault, you never have to try. If you never have to try, you never have to risk failing again. It is a psychological fortress, but it is a fortress built of quicksand. It feels solid, but it is swallowing you whole. History hands us the ultimate witness to this brutal truth in Viktor Frankl. Imprisoned in Auschwitz, stripped of every possession, every dignity, and every loved one, Frankl observed his fellow prisoners with the eye of a psychiatrist. Some became brutish, cruel copies of their guards. Others withered and died in a state of resigned depression. But a precious few, the ones who survived with their souls intact, were those who maintained a spark of internal choice. They helped the sick. They shared their last crust of bread, and they imagined a future beyond the barbed wire. Frankl wrote his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, in which he distilled the most liberating truth ever uttered. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Frankl did not deny the horror of his past. He simply refused to let that horror write the final chapter of his life. You have not been to Auschwitz, but you have been to your own private hells. If Frankl could choose meaning in the shadow of the gas chambers, you can choose agency in the shadow of your bruised ego. Let's bring this to the living room of an ordinary human being. Let's call her Maria. Maria was abandoned by her father at age 6. She grew up with a mother who worked 3 jobs and was never home. Maria tells this story at every dinner party, to every therapist, and in every job interview that goes sideways. She says, "I have trust issues because of my father, and I struggle with intimacy because I was neglected." She wears these diagnoses like medals of honor. She is 42 now. She hasn't had a relationship lasting more than 6 months in 15 years. She is passed over for promotions because she refuses to take risks. She is not wrong about her past. Her past was objectively difficult, but her use of her past is a weapon she points at her own forehead. She treats her childhood as an immutable law of physics rather than a historical data point. The moment Maria stops saying, "I am this way because of my past," and starts saying, "I was this way because of my past, but I am choosing differently today," her entire neural architecture begins to rewire. She is not waiting for a miracle, she is waiting for a decision. Make the decision. Now, let's paint a fictional portrait that will sting like antiseptic on an open wound. Imagine a prisoner who has been in a dark cell for 2 decades. He is kept alive by a single sliver of light that enters through a crack in the wall. He tells himself, "That light is my hope. As long as I see it, I survive." But one day, the guards mistakenly leave the door unlocked. The prisoner looks at the open door, and then he looks back at the sliver of light. He is terrified. He has never walked through a door. He knows the light is familiar. He tells himself, what if the hallway is darker? What if there are guards out there? He closes the door, locks it, and returns to his spot on the floor. He prefers the certainty of the small light to the uncertainty of a vast horizon. Your trauma is that sliver of light. It is not hope. It is a narcotic. The door is open. The universe is offering you freedom. But freedom requires you to walk into a hallway you have never seen. Walk. The hallway has light of its own. The neurological underpinning of this addiction is the default mode network, DMN, the part of your brain that becomes active when you are not focused on an external task, when you are daydreaming, ruminating, or remembering. For people with a strong victim narrative, the DMN is chronically overactive, constantly replaying the greatest hits of past injustices. This rumination is physically addictive. It releases a cocktail of stress hormones that, over time, create a chemical dependency on the feeling of being wronged. Your brain literally craves the cortisol spike of righteous indignation. You are a junkie, and your drug is your own suffering. The withdrawal symptoms are terrifying. When you stop blaming your parents, your ex, your boss, or your luck, you are left with the terrifying emptiness of you. You must face the sobering reality that your life is entirely your creation. That sobriety is the cure. Embrace the hangover of accountability. It will pass, and in its passing you will find clarity. History gives us the monumental counterexample of Frederick Douglass. Born into slavery, stripped of his name, his language, and his family, Douglass had every right to a victim narrative that would have justified a life of bitterness. Instead, he secretly taught himself to read by trading bread with white children. He learned that knowledge was his path to freedom. He escaped, became a towering orator, and counseled Abraham Lincoln. He did not deny the whip marks on his back. He showed them to audiences to prove the cruelty of the system. But he did not build his identity on those marks. He built his identity on the act of escaping. He said, "I prayed for freedom for 20 years. But I didn't get it until I prayed with my legs." You have been praying with your lips. You have been narrating your pain. You must pray with your legs. You must move. Douglass moved. He didn't just survive. He rewrote the American conscience. Your movement does not have to change the world. It just has to change yours. Real life, brutal, and contemporary, consider the Alcoholics Anonymous model. The first step is admitting powerlessness over the addiction. But here is the trap. Many people stop at step one. They use the admission of powerlessness as a permanent excuse. I'm an alcoholic, what can I do? The AA veteran knows that step one is just the gateway to step two. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That power greater than ourselves is often just the power of collective accountability and the power of daily choice. The real alcoholic doesn't say, "I am a victim of my genes." The real alcoholic says, "I am responsible for my recovery." You do not have a substance addiction, but you have an addiction to your narrative. Admit you are powerless over the past that is true, but do not stop there. Believe in the power of your present choice to restore your sanity. That power is not mystical, it is neurological. Every time you choose a new action, you prune the old neural pathways and grow new ones. Your brain is plastic. You are not fixed. You are fluid. Fictional, but neurologically exact. A sculptor has a block of marble that is cracked. He tells everyone, "I cannot carve anything beautiful because the marble is flawed." He drags that cracked block to every exhibition, lamenting his bad luck. A young apprentice takes the same block, studies the crack, and carves a sculpture of a man leaning into a storm. The crack becomes the wind-blown crease in the man's cloak. The master sees it and weeps, not because the sculpture is beautiful, but because he spent 50 years blaming the marble. Your crack is your trauma. It is not a flaw, it is a feature. It is the crease in your cloak that makes you unique. Stop asking for a new block of marble. Start carving the one you have. The most profound art in history was born from the constraints of broken materials. Your constraints are your materials. The psychology deepens with cognitive dissonance and the need for self-consistency. When you have invested years in the identity of the wronged one, any deviation from that identity creates excruciating dissonance. Your brain will fight to maintain the status quo. If you have a thought like, maybe I can do better, an opposing thought immediately arises. But what about what they did to me? This is your brain's homeostatic defense mechanism. To break it, you must deliberately talk back to that opposing thought. You must say, yes, they did that, and I am choosing to do this anyway. You do not need to deny the past. You just need to stop using it as a veto over your future. The past is a witness, not a judge. You are the judge. You have the gavel. Bang it. Declare a new sentence. History gives us the story of Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in a cell on Robben Island. He was a prisoner of the most racist regime in modern history. He had every right to emerge with a heart full of venom. Instead, he emerged with a message of reconciliation. He asked his white guards to stay on his security detail. He embraced the very system that imprisoned him. He did not forgive because the apartheid regime deserved it. He forgave because the venom inside him was a poison that would kill his own capacity for leadership. He understood that holding on to a grievance is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You are drinking your own poison daily. You toast to your suffering. You sip your resentment. Spit it out. The venom is not power, it is paralysis. Real life, the micro experience of the office. A talented graphic designer, let's call him Tom, was passed over for a promotion 5 years ago because his boss gave it to his nephew. Tom has been coasting ever since. He tells himself, why should I work hard for a company that doesn't value me? He shows up at 9,005, leaves at 4:55, and does the bare minimum. His portfolio has not been updated in 3 years. When layoffs come, he is first on the list. He blames the system. But the system didn't make him average. His reaction to a single slight made him average. The nephew, meanwhile, works long hours, builds relationships, and gets promoted again. Tom sees this as injustice, but it is just mathematics. Effort compounds. Resentment stagnates. Tom's victimhood cost him his career. You are Tom. You have a nephew in your life who got something you didn't. Stop counting his blessings. Start counting your strokes. The only person you are punishing is yourself. Fictional, a mirror to your soul. A king is cursed by a witch to have a crow perpetually perched on his shoulder, whispering his greatest mistake into his ear. The king tries to shoo it away. He tries to kill it. He hires magicians. The crow remains. Finally, a wise old woman tells him, the crow is not the curse. The crow is not the curse. The curse is that you believe the whisper. Turn to the crow and say, yes, I know, I made that mistake. I've learned. Now, be silent. The king does this. The crow vanishes. The whisper was not the voice of fate. It was the echo of his own unprocessed guilt. Your crow is your past failure. It whispers, remember when you cheated. Remember when you were fired. Remember when she left you. You have been hiring magicians to silence it. The only magic is acknowledgement. Yes, I did that. I was wrong. I have changed. That is the exorcism. Perform it now. The neuroscience of neuroplasticity offers the ultimate liberation. Your brain is not a static organ. It is a dynamic ecosystem. Every time you rehearse your victim narrative, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with that memory. You are literally building a superhighway of suffering in your cortex. But when you reinterpret that memory with a lens of growth asking, what did I learn? Or how did this make me more resilient? You engage the prefrontal cortex in a way that dampens the amygdala's fear response. You are not erasing the memory, you are reclassifying it. A file marked danger becomes a file marked lesson. The file is still in the cabinet, but it no longer controls your behavior. You are the archivist. You can relabel every single file. Start relabeling. The trauma folder is now the fuel folder. History offers the fascinating case of Alexander Hamilton. He was an illegitimate orphan in the West Indies, abandoned by his father, traumatized by his mother's death. He clawed his way to America, became Washington's right-hand man, founded the Treasury, and wrote the majority of the Federalist Papers. He was killed in a duel by Aaron Burr. In his final letter, he apologized to his wife and children, but he did not lament his childhood. He viewed his adversity as the forge of his ambition. He wrote, "I have no resentment against my early misfortunes, for they drove me to seek a better path." Hamilton did not deny his past. He thanked it. He leveraged it. Your past is not a shackle. It is a lever. Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and I will move the world." Your trauma is the place to stand. Leverage it. Real life. The story of a contemporary musician. She grew up in a violent household. She sings about the violence, but she does not sing about it with a whimper. She sings about it with a roar. She has turned her pain into a multi-platinum career. She does not avoid the subject. She dominates it. She said in an interview, "My father broke my spirit, so I rebuilt it with steel. And now when I sing, people feel that steel. They trust me because they know I have been to the bottom and crawled out." She did not become a singer despite her pain. She became a singer because of her pain. The paintbrush of her suffering painted her masterpiece. You have pain. You have a brush. What masterpiece are you painting? If you are painting a self-portrait of a tear-streaked face, put the brush down. Paint a portrait of a warrior. Fictional, the allegory of the two wolves. This is an old Cherokee parable, but I will twist it for our purpose. A grandfather tells his grandson, "Inside you, there are two wolves. One is the wolf of anger, self-pity, and resentment. The other is the wolf of courage, resilience, and peace. They fight constantly." The grandson asks, "Which wolf wins?" The grandfather says, "The one you feed." You have been feeding the wolf of self-pity with the finest cuts of emotional meat. You have been dining with him, sharing stories, and patting his head. That wolf is now a monster that devours your ambition. Starve that wolf. It will howl and gnash its teeth. It will beg. Do not feed it. Feed the other wolf with action. Feed it with small victories. The wolf of courage does not need a feast. It needs a crumb of action to grow. Give it that crumb today. Psychological concept post-traumatic growth is the opposite of PTSD. It is the phenomenon where individuals who have endured severe adversity emerge stronger, more grateful, and more connected than they were before. It is not about minimizing the trauma. It is about maximizing the response. The growth is not a given. It is a choice. It requires active cognitive processing. You must ask the hard questions. How has this pain made me more compassionate? How has this failure clarified my purpose? How has this loss taught me to appreciate what I have left? You have a choice between post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth. The stress is passive. The growth is active. You have been passive long enough. Get active. Grow. History. The phoenix is a myth, but the reality is the city of Hiroshima. It was annihilated by an atomic bomb. The survivors, the Hibakusha, lived with radiation sickness and social stigma. Some surrendered to despair. Others rebuilt the city, built a peace memorial, and transformed it into a symbol of reconciliation and technological advancement. They did not deny the bomb. They built a museum about it. They used the wound to teach the world. They grew. They transformed. You have your own bomb, your divorce, your bankruptcy, your diagnosis. Build a peace museum out of it. Not to dwell, but to teach. You become the teacher of your own survival. And in teaching, you heal. Real life, the daily struggle, you wake up and look in the mirror. You see the face of someone who has been hurt. You say, "I am damaged." What if you said instead, "I am seasoned"? The difference is semantic, but semantics shape reality. Language is the software of the brain. Reinstall the software. Change your vocabulary. Stop saying, "I can't because I was traumatized." Say, "I can." and I will use my trauma as a compass. Stop saying, "They did this to me." Say, "I have been through this, and I am still standing. Now, I choose to run." Your tongue is a wand. Cast a new spell. Fictional, the sculptor again, but this time a different ending. The sculptor with the cracked marble carves his sculpture. He exhibits it. The public loves the crack. A collector pays a fortune. The sculptor becomes famous. He does not forget the crack. He knows it is the soul of the piece. He issues a statement. The crack is not a flaw. It is the moment the marble surrendered to my vision. Your surrender to your vision is the moment you stop fighting the past and start crafting the future. The crack is not a flaw. It is your signature. Sign it. The ultimate psychological shift from vulnerable to vulnerability as strength. Brené Brown made this famous, but I will make it sharper. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the courage to be seen. But the victim hides. The victim hides afraid of being seen as a failure, so they preemptively say, "I am a victim, so you cannot judge me." That is not vulnerability, that is a shield. True vulnerability is saying, "I have been hurt and I am still trying. I may fall, but I am not fallen." That attracts the world. That inspires the world. You have been hiding behind your shield. Drop the shield. Let the world see your bleeding, bandaged but moving hands. The world doesn't pity the moving wounded. The world follows them. History's final lesson. Jesus Christ on the cross. He was the ultimate victim of injustice executed by the state, betrayed by his friend. But he did not say, "Look what you have done to me." He said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And then he rose. The narrative of Christianity is not the narrative of victimhood. It is the narrative of resurrection. You do not have to be religious to see the power of that reframe. You cannot resurrect unless you die. You must die to your old identity. You must let the narrative of poor me bleed out on the cross of your own will, and then you must rise. The tomb is empty. Your past is empty. It holds nothing but bones. Walk out of the tomb. The sun is up. I return to the question that opened this manifesto of liberation. What if the story you tell yourself about your past is not the truth, but a carefully crafted prison designed to protect you from the terrifying responsibility of your own future? The answer is not a thought, it is an action. The truth is that your past is a grain of sand on an infinite beach. You have been building a castle out of that grain, defending it against the tide of your potential. Let the tide come. Let the castle wash away. The ocean is your future. It is vast, terrifying, and magnificent. Dive into it. The water is cold, but you are alive. You have always been alive. You just forgot because you were too busy reading the epitaph on your own headstone. Erase the headstone. Engrave a compass. Point it north. Walk. The ice will crack beneath your feet, and you will either learn to walk on water or you will learn to swim. Either way, you will move. Stop sitting on the shore. Move. Now. The story is over. The history is closed. The future is open. Write it with the sweat of your brow and the fire of your spirit. Write it now.